Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's edition of Invisible Things. So glad everybody could join us. We want to remind everybody if you join us live, please like, share, and in the comments, please tell us who you are and where you're watching us from. And boy, we're so glad to have you. And here we are on number 53. Where's my cohort in crime? My producer, my co-teacher, my brainiac of all brainiacs. There she is.
I'm present.
Hey,
Just
darling.
Check the box. That's all.
I'm here. No. You have a lot of comments about tonight's lesson. So
is that good or bad?
That's good. That's okay. Good. That's good. We all let me say tonight we're trying to hit some spots, and we're sticking to the order of the chapters of First Kings. So tonight we're doing chapter 12, 13, and 14, Lord willing. But moving on from here, we're not going to be necessarily covering all of it in linear fashion. I just want you to know. Hey, Mike and Wanda, so glad to have y'all with us. We're not going to be doing it necessarily in linear fashion, but to finish up First Kings and Second Kings, we're going to cover in just a minute. You're going to see why passages that will teach us things, illustrate things, provide us lessons we can learn from, and so that's our intent. So please be doing your homework. Please be doing your studying. And just understand that we're wanting you to get the background, and then we'll, if y'all are trusting me and Snar to continue to lead you guys in this thing, we'll be trying to be following the leading of the Holy Spirit and covering the passages that the Lord wants us to highlight and bring to everybody's attention. Plus, give you all the background information that you folks have told us that you love seeing from us, the maps, the extra biblical, historical, archaeological, geological, geographical information that helps bring all these scriptures to life, to show us the fuller picture of things in the Bible. So we appreciate that, and that's what we're going to do. But we're just telling you now, we're not going to go word for word, verse by verse, at least for the next to finish First Kings and Second Kings as we move forward. Okay, Sweetie, you want to kick off?
I don't know how to kick off.
Well, do you want to start?
If I'm supposed to be on the kickoff team, then you have to tell a person in advance they are on the kickoff team. You don't just put somebody who hadn't been to practice all week out on the field to kick off.
Well, you can at least do the first page, can't you?
I can say that this is about a kingdom divided. It is podcast number 53. And I can tell you what the date of today is. I can say this, you and I talked about this a good bit this morning, and I was, I'm the person who has to have the bird's eye view of everything, and then I can zoom in on the details, which makes us complete opposites, because you know all the details and have a hard time giving the bird's eye view. So what we're looking at here is a period in time in history when Solomon is dead, and what happens to the kingdom or kingdoms after that. And I guess by the title, we know that the kingdom is going to become divided. Mm-hmm. But we're ready to hear from you. We're ready to hear. That was the bird's eye view, and we're ready to hear the details.
All right. Here are your reference slides. Now, we're only going to put these in here for just a few weeks at a time, and then we'll pause. We won't put them in every time. So just keep that in mind. This is the biblical panorama of history, and this is the monarchy. Okay. And this shows the relationship between the players, the important people, the prophets in some cases, the divided kingdoms, and how they're covered in the books of the Bible, first and second, excuse me, first and second Samuel, first and second Kings, first and second Chronicles. All right, when are we? All right. Solomon dies. Rehoboam becomes king. Rehoboam is Solomon's blood, is Solomon's son by blood. And this we're still talking in the time period of around 931 to 930 BC. And Jeroboam leads the revolt of the northern kingdom at the same time that Rehoboam becomes king. All right, where are we? Well,
We're in Israel.
And this is the maximum extent of the nation of Israel under King David and King Solomon, and this is fixing to go away quickly, very quickly. Okay, we're going to give you a little overview because I'm fixing to hit the next slide, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. All right, this is the divided kingdom. The northern kingdom is in green. The southern kingdom is in, let's call it burnt orange. And what you have as the vassal states, let's go back one. If you remember from what we've studied, Moab, the land of the Ammonites, Aram, all the way up to the Euphrates River, those were vassal states. And even though King Solomon controlled them militarily, they were sort of semi-autonomous regions. And basically, as long as they didn't give King Solomon any trouble, and paid their taxes, then, militarily they were at peace. Okay. But what happened when the kingdom split after King Solomon died? The vassal states, except for the land of the Ammonites, pretty much went, Edom rebelled, Moab rebelled, Philistia, they were always a thorn in the side, but Solomon had them subdued.
That's because he married all their daughters.
Well, there you go. If y'all remember the king of the Phoenician king, the king of Tyre, he was a big contributor to everything with the King David's palace, and then also the temple and King Solomon's palace complex. That's you'll see Tyre and Sidon up there in the upper left. That's in the land of Phoenicia. Well, they were pretty much breaking away, and so all you had left, and oh my gosh, it's just such a tragic story. But we'll go over the reasons why. But this is basically all that was left of that magnificent, wonderful, flourishing kingdom that King David and King Solomon put together. All right, here's something else I told you we're going to put in here. Probably we're going to leave this one slide up in just about every presentation we do. And why do you think that is?
Because we're talking about a king that has not come yet. Well,
but this is what this is the kings that Moses prophesied would come to the nation of Israel. This isn't about the Davidic covenant. This is how to measure all the kings. David was supposed to be, just remember, y'all.
Oh, this is the one they were supposed to, like, when your teacher tells you to write lines, and because that's supposed to help you remember it. God told him to write this out, right? Write it, copy for himself, and in his own hand. He's supposed to copy this, and he's supposed to remember it all the days of his life, which I don't think he should have told him to write it 100 times.
Yes, that's right. But just remember, everybody remember this now. Deuteronomy 17. Don't ever forget Deuteronomy 17. It contains the passage, and it's verses 14 through 20, that every king of Israel was to be measured by. He was not supposed to be trying to multiply horses and chariots in his military. He was not to be multiplying wives. He was not to be multiplying silver and gold for himself. Well, so far, that wasn't held up very well. And and then Solomon came along, and as we know, he married 700 wives, 300 concubines, no telling how many mistresses, and oh my gosh, all this. I mean, it was just the kingdom was in serious decline by the time Solomon got up into old age. And again, he had peace, but the visits from the foreigners, the homage that the foreigners paid to Solomon, that greatly waned in his later years. And why was that? Because all these wives induced Solomon to turn. He didn't turn his back on Jehovah, but he certainly didn't.
He accommodated all those women and all those little g gods, and he incorporated all that into his way of letting things happen.
Yes, and God judged him for that, as we will see very quickly here. And this is how the last, how did we finish up last time? Here's the last two verses of chapter 11. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all he did and the wisdom he displayed, are they not written in the book of the annals of Solomon? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son succeeded him as king. Now, God's judgment upon Solomon. Here we go, chapter 12. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. So it happened when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard it, he was still in Egypt, for he had fled from the presence of King Solomon and had been dwelling in Egypt. How many of you remember who Jeroboam is? All right, he's fixed to come on the scene real soon. But if you remember, Jeroboam is the one that had the prophet meet him in the road and said, "Hey, I got this new garment on. I'm going to tear it into 12 pieces, and I'm going to hand you 10 of them." And he said, because of he's judging Solomon for his failure to maintain strict worship of Jehovah God, and that he has chased after other gods and supported them, then God was going to take the nation of Israel out of his family, and 10 tribes he was going to give to Jeroboam, and one tribe, Judah, which had already had Benjamin and Simeon rolled into, was going to be retained. And that was not because of Solomon, if you remember. That was because of God's covenant with David. And that's what we studied last time. Remember that? Okay, well, that's Jeroboam heard that Solomon died, so he was coming back from Egypt. So it happened when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard it. Where am I? There we go. That they sent and called him. Then Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, "Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the burdensome service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and we will serve you." So he said to them, "Depart for 3 days, then come back to me." And the people departed. 1 Kings 12.
I'm going to say right now, I think we can just substitute the word yoke for basically taxes.
Exactly.
And whether that tax was food or money or whatever it was whatever the people had, they were being heavily taxed. And they're saying, "Hey, your dad was taxing us. Can you lighten up a little bit?" And he said, well, give me 3 days to think about it.
Well, just think about it. 700 wives, 300 concubines. I mean, they all had to have their own attendants and handmaids, and had to be fed and clothed and protected and kept out of the weather. And
think about how high maintenance one wife is, Keith. Think about how high maintenance one wife is. How in the world did he make 700? Yeah.
Well, and you got to acknowledge that as Solomon declined, those people, coming to see him and bringing these huge amounts of gifts and all that probably, started falling away.
Yeah, the new probably wore off pretty quick on
Exactly.
that. Everybody wants to jump in there and, contribute and be part of the dynasty in the beginning, but by the end, I doubt anybody was, had stars in their eyes anymore over Solomon.
Well, don't you remember, we've studied how Mike says, really, when we're coming about high maintenance wives. But you remember last time we studied about how Solomon was big into building military outposts all through the kingdom. He built several cities that were for no other purpose than to house his charioteers and his horses. Okay. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the city, several of them. That's the only reason they were created.
And what did God say? God said just a few things. One of them was not to multiply horses or wealth for yourself, for himself. For the nation, for the nation to be prosperous, yes, but this was for him. This was for Solomon himself. This was his own little garage with all his different cars in it, if you want to look at it that way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So in Solomon's latter years, he was basically taxing the people to no end. And you mentioned taxes, but one of the taxes that they considered taxes was the forced servitude of public works projects, digging canals and building conduits and things like that.
Well, that's all some people had to offer was their labor. They didn't have anything else to give. So, there was going to be a tax that way, on top of everything else.
Exactly. So, yeah. And so they're saying, look, your father was just about to tax us to the point where we're just going, why bother waking up in the morning? Why bother? I mean, he's taxed us to the point of just giving up. That's what they were trying to tell Rehoboam. Okay. Let's don't get too fast. Rehoboam, son of Solomon. Jeroboam was from the tribe of Ephraim, and he was in the north. Rehoboam, Jeroboam. They sound alike.
Why did they have to have the names so close
at the same time?
It's all confusing enough as it is. I wonder what those names probably mean something very important. We should have looked that up. But anyway, go ahead.
Well,
maybe one meant king of the north and one meant king of the south. I don't know. They'd rename people all the time.
Well, let's look at this. Let's segue a little bit. Why was Shechem an appropriate place for the crowning of a king of the nation of Israel? Now, remember, Solomon was a king over the United Kingdom. Rehoboam was supposed to be a king over the United Kingdom, and he was going to Shechem to be anointed as king. Basically, because that's where the people said they wanted to meet him at and anoint him king. Okay, so why was Shechem an appropriate place for the crowning of a king? By the way, for those of you who might be interested, the modern day city of Nablus, Nablus, that is ancient Shechem. Okay, and Nablus is in the West Bank, which means, and we've covered this before. In the West Bank area of Israel, you have pockets that are controlled by Israel exclusively, military and civilly. Then you have pockets that are controlled by the Palestinian PLO civilly and Israeli military. And then you have some that are kind of quasi in between. And so Nablus is it's almost solidly Palestinian now, Arabs, and they're not very friendly to Christians or Jews who would like to come to Shechem. But as long as you get it approved by the Israeli military, you're still good, okay? But that's when you hear any reference to the city of Nablus, that is ancient Shechem, and the ancient ruins of the historic city of Shechem are right there in the middle of the city of Nablus. Okay. All right. What are some things that we remember about the Shechem? Jehovah first appeared to Abraham and promised his descendants they would inherit all of Canaan in Shechem. That's Genesis 12. Jacob settled there on returning to Canaan after his meeting with Esau. That's Genesis 33. The Hebrew people made a covenant with Jehovah there between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. That's Joshua 8. And they renewed this covenant again at Shechem in Joshua 24.
Shechem was a big deal. Shechem was a holy site. Many events had happened there. And there was a place of, wasn't it pretty much centrally located?
It was very centrally located.
So it would make sense that would be where they might crown a king. They'd already had a big old blow up over somebody not, helping plan on one of King David's, reinstatements. So, they were trying to have it at Shechem, at a big neutral ground for everybody, kind of. Make
everybody happy.
Nobody could say that wasn't a holy site or important to the Jewish people or the nation. So they thought they were doing good.
Exactly. All right. And Joseph was buried there. That's Joshua 24. Now let's go back to Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. That is the place, the ceremony of the blessings and curses. And on Mount Ebal is where they found the altar, Joshua's altar. They found the original Joshua's altar, and then
And you're talking about in our time. They've recently found all that, and they found the little curses tablet. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's exactly right. Now, the altar of Joshua was found, and it was the centerpiece of the altar that was actually built over it. In other words, you start with a little bitty church, and then, things keep going on there and more people. So you build a bigger church around the little bitty church. And that's kind of what the altar of Joshua was there on Mount Ebal. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's move on. All right. Do y'all remember seeing this? Okay. This is looking eastward. This is looking toward the east. So in the valley, right there is...
It's hard to see, but that third pin from the left is Shechem. That's Shechem there. It's hard to see it, but there you go. That helps a little bit. Mm-hmm.
All right. Shechem is down in this valley, and we're looking east toward the Jordan River. To the left is Mount Ebal, the crown of Mount Ebal, and then further to the left is where they found Joshua's altar.
So is this a current recent aerial photograph of this area?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. This is actual, whatever satellite service was used here. That's what this is.
Okay.
Okay. Or aerial. It might have been just a high flying airplane.
I am assuming that at that time it was not this big. There was not that much.
Of course not. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And folks, if you could see ancient Shechem, the walled city of Shechem, it is a very small area compared to what you're looking at there. Okay. But then to the right is Mount Gerizim. And on Mount Gerizim is where they pronounce the blessings, and on Mount Ebal is where they pronounce the curses. Okay. And next slide. Now this is the same place, but you're looking westward toward the Mediterranean Sea. And that's why Mount Gerizim is on the south side, Mount Ebal is on the north side, and you're looking westward. And again, what's the name of this city, the modern day city? Nablus, Nablus. Okay. Let me catch up. Then, there we go. Thank you, sweetie. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who stood before his father Solomon while he still lived. And he said, how do you advise me to answer these people? And they spoke to him saying, If you will be a servant to these people today and serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. But he rejected the advice which the elders had given him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. And he said to them, what advice do you give? How should we answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, lighten the yoke which your father put on us? Then the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, thus you shall speak to the people who have spoken to you. My father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter on us. Thus you shall say to them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist. And it basically saying, if you thought my father was bad, just wait till you get a boatload of me. And now, whereas my father put a heavy yoke on you, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. The Hebrew word there is akrab, which literally means scorpion. And it's a slang for the use of you've heard the phrase cat o' nine tails. And
well, it was a whip. It's a whip that had little pieces in the whip that they would, tear the skin. They used that on Jesus, a scourge on Jesus.
Exactly. It'd be
so basically, here he went to the older people who were wise and had been advising, and they said, look, yeah, you need to consider, lightening your hand on these people. And isn't this just so typical? Nothing changes because, young people, you go to your friends, like you tell them, your girlfriend said so-and-so, or she did so-and-so. And they go, well, let me tell you what I'd tell her. I'd go back and I'd tell her. But if they really had to go back and tell her that, they wouldn't be saying it like that.
Exactly.
This idiot listens to what his friends say and actually goes and does that and says that to the people.
Well, he's not a kid, but he is younger than the elders that had been around all the way back to the time of Solomon.
Yeah, he's not a kid. Wasn't he about 40? I think he was around 40.
Yeah, we're going to find out that he was in his 40s when he became king. But again, he's still listening to younger people, the firebrands, the zealots, that he hung around with them. And he was a spoiled KK, king's kid. Called PKs when you're referring to a preacher's kid. He was a KK.
He's a KK.
King's kid.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All right. Where else do we see this? Where the young ones are the firebrands and they're wanting to, oh my gosh, let me show you what a great Pharisee I am and that sort of thing. Well, let's look in the book of John and see how Jesus saw the same kind of stuff. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, Teacher, this woman was caught in an act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Now pay attention to this. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time. The older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir. Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. What's the lesson there in verse 9? The older ones who had the wisdom, who had the temperament, that had the experience, that had lived some years on this earth, well, they knew when Jesus said, hey, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. What did they know? Ooh, boy, he just burned us. But who didn't get the message? Who didn't get the message right away? The young ones. because the point is made that the older ones are the ones, as they left one by one, it was the older ones who would drop their stone and kind of fade off to the side. Well, that obviously implies that the younger ones, oh man, they're still on, they're on fire.
They thought they were justified.
There you go.
They may have tried to convince themselves of that for a minute. They may have gone through their process. She was committing adultery all by herself too. I just have to say that. Anyway.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
Yeah, folks, these are the kind of things that we can spend 2 weeks on just on stories like this when we get to the New Testament.
A lot of people have wondered what Jesus wrote, and I wondered if he just started kind of writing out the 10 Commandments, and seeing they looked down there and saw those. Well, no.
Well, depending on what version of the Bible you're reading, he's either writing or he's drawing. And I haven't seen any commentators that I would pick one over the other yet.
No.
But let's move on. The whole reason I brought that one in was just to illustrate, the practical. Go ahead.
There is something to experience. There is something in wisdom and experience.
Yeah.
And there is something in having lived long enough on this earth to, come full circle and realize what a sinner you are. When you're younger, I think you try to be above all that and think you can outsmart it and you can get away from it. But the older you get, the more you realize you're a sinner that needs to be saved.
Exactly. So anyway, let's go back to where we were. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day as the king had directed, saying, "Come back to me the third day." And the king answered the people roughly. The Hebrew word is probably more accurately gives the intonation that it was harshly. He was speaking to them like, indignantly, harshly, okay, and rejected the advice which the elders had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges." So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from the Lord, that he might fulfill his word, which the Lord had spoken by Ahijah to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Stop right there. What is Scripture clearly telling us?
Well, first of all, the thing that struck me about this, so Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam. At this point in time, Jeroboam was with the people trying to get him to relent and, lessen the yoke on the people. But not only did he say he didn't even say he was going to leave it the same. He said he was going to make it even harder. So the king didn't listen to the people. So he took the advice of the younger people. What are you trying to get at, Keith?
At verse 15. For the turn of events was from the Lord, that he might fulfill his word. Now, did he make Did he make Rehoboam reject Jeroboam and the representatives of the 10 northern tribes? Did he make him reject him? Or did he know he was going to reject him?
That's a good point.
Okay. Now, when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, "What share have we in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to your own house, O David." So Israel departed to their tents, but Rehoboam reigned over the children of Israel who dwelt in the cities of Judah. Now, some of this can be confusing if you hadn't been with us, but we've repeated it over several lessons now, that in the United Kingdom, like the nation of Israel today, Israel means all the 12 tribes that are represented. Okay? But at the split, the house of Israel, the tribe of Israel, is always referring to the northern 10 tribes. Judah, the house of Judah, the house of David, house of Jesse's talking about Judah, Benjamin, and Simeon. Okay?
That's confusing. Go ahead.
I know it's confusing, and I'm going to tell you something. There was so many of the times when I was younger and I was studying the Old Testament that I would just blow right on through this because I didn't understand the significance. When it would refer to Israel, when it would refer to Judah, why was there a difference? Nobody ever explained it to me. I later on learned, yes, there were divided kingdoms, and I finally had a preacher. I don't know, is that a revival maybe? I don't remember. But I finally had a preacher who at least explained to the congregation that the divided kingdom was made up of X and Y, and Y was the northern kingdom and X was the southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom didn't last very long before they had to go into exile, and we'll see here in a minute why. Okay, and the southern kingdom lasted a little bit longer, but they eventually had to go into exile as well, and you'll see why here shortly in a minute also. Okay, so yes, you think it's confusing, but if you just keep that in mind, the northern kingdom is, once it was divided, you'll see it a lot of times, the king of Israel, the king of Israel, the king of the tribe of Israel, the house of Israel. It's always referring to, from here on out, it's always referring to the northern kingdom. Okay, and then the king of Judah is the tribe of Judah plus Benjamin and Simeon. King Rehoboam then sent Adoram as envoy to the northern tribes. Well, how many of you remember who Adoram was? He was the one who had been put in charge of revenue, 2 Samuel 20, 2 Chronicles 10, and the conscription, the draft, in other words, of forced laborers. That's 1 Kings 4 and chapter 5.
He was the one that was in charge for David or Solomon, or what are you saying here?
He did work under Solomon. He did work under Solomon. Yes, he was one of those appointees under King Solomon. Yes.
Okay, I got you.
And he stayed on in those officerships after King Solomon died, and he was prepared to stay in those jobs, those posts for Rehoboam. But then Rehoboam, basically jumps out of the frying pan into the fire, because he sent Adoram to be his envoy to the northern tribes. You got to remember now, they had just all gathered up and said, "Hey, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going back to our houses. To heck with you."
So Adoram was the bravest man on the face of the earth right then.
Yeah, so, right there he was.
Or the stupidest, because he went up there as the envoy to try to say, "Hey, I'm here for the tax."
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, Adoram, because of his positions, being over the treasury and head over the forced labor groups, he was the embodiment of all that oppressed the people by King Rehoboam. So the people of the northern tribe stoned him to death. And when Jeroboam found out about them killing Adoram, he fled back to Jerusalem.
He hightailed it.
He hightailed it. That's right. And, when Rehoboam was heading back to Jerusalem, the people pretty much by acclamation all agreed that Jeroboam was going to be made king over all the house of Israel, the northern tribes. And that left Rehoboam only ruling over Judah, which, like I said, without having to say it every time, includes the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Simeon. Now, it happened at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah met him on the way, and he had clothed himself. Oh, wait a minute. That was not supposed to be there, but I know why I put that in there. That was where it talked about.
He tore his garment and said, 10 to 12 pieces and said, "You 10 for you," and he's going to tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon. He's going to give it to him. Mm.
Exactly.
This is previous to what we're studying right now, though, right?
Right.
Okay. All
and
right.
there's the judgment on Solomon.
You better click through some of these. We're at 41 minutes, and I know you got a lot.
Okay, remember, God's promise to Jeroboam was conditional. How do we know that? Because it was an if-then promise. If Jeroboam would do what God said he would do, he was going to bless Jeroboam as a king that would have an heir on the throne forever. Okay, just like David, but Jeroboam, couldn't
It's
stand
almost
prosperity.
like I need you to put Jeroboam the northerner and Rehoboam the southerner. I can't keep them straight, but I see. Okay, so Jeroboam in the north.
Yes,
he
and
fled to Egypt.
remember, as a judgment against Solomon, he had promised Jeroboam that he was going to get the 10 tribes, but he was going to keep the tribe of Judah for the descendant of Solomon. That was the promise he made. That was the judgment he had made against Solomon. Now, when Solomon learned of the prospects of Jeroboam becoming an adversary, Solomon sought to kill him, and he fled to Egypt until Solomon passed away. When Rehoboam got back to Jerusalem, he assembled 180,000 soldiers under the banner of Judah to fight against the house of Israel, thinking that he would reunite the kingdom by force. But before they could strike out, what happened? Jehovah spoke through the prophet Shemaiah, however. Folks, we're going to butcher these things.
We do the best we can.
Oh, my goodness.
Where's the one that says, here we go. I can never say this word. We just go on through with it, don't we? And everybody else should too. Don't stop reading the Bible because you can't pronounce the names. I don't care if you call that Shaniqua Dawn. That you just say whatever you gotta say and get in your mind what's going on. Just keep on going. Keep on going.
Okay, well, here's the second time where the scripture tells us, and this is God speaking through the prophet to those assembled warriors out of the south, that what had transpired was God's will. Leave it alone. Don't go against me. That's basically what he was telling them. So they disbanded and returned to their homes. Then Jeroboam built, in the Hebrew word there really means fortified, because remember, Shechem was already there. What it meant is he strengthened the fortifications of Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim and dwelt there. And remember, this is Jeroboam now, northern kingdom, not Rehoboam, southern kingdom. Also, he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom may return to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn back to their Lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah.
Can I paraphrase that?
Yeah.
I think that's confusing to just read that. But it's basically saying, if I let these people go down there to worship at Jerusalem, they ain't gonna come back. They're not gonna stay up there. They're gonna wind up staying in Jerusalem, or they'll kill me and say, we don't want to be a part of your kingdom. So, what did he do?
Well,
to keep the people there.
Well, here's my comment first before we continue reading. Is it obvious that he suffered from low self-esteem, very little confidence? He was
paranoid.
Yeah. Okay.
With good reason,
Well, it was a good reason. Didn't God say he was going to put him in charge of the 10 northern tribes?
No, but I'm going to say that the fact what he did next proves to me that he was paranoid, and it wasn't just I mean, he didn't rely on what God said. He was living in fear of what would happen. And when we live in fear, we're not trusting.
There's a good point. There's a good point. All right, let's read on, because this is what's going to tell the tape. This is going to be the tale of the tape. And, we're trying to pause and throw out some things to get you to think. But let's read. Therefore, the king asked advice, made 2 calves of gold, and said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. And he set up one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Now this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan. He made shrines. The Hebrew words means house or temples on the high places, and made priests from every class of people who were not the sons of Levi. I mean, it's like, how far off do you want to, yeah. How far off do you want to go? Okay.
Calves of gold. We're looking at Hathor. We're looking at Hathor. He says it. He says, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. Remember when they said, oh, Hathor's done all this. Moses didn't do this. Hathor brought us up out of there. That's what this is. That is what this is.
Well,
and not only that, I mean, God designated who were going to be the Levitical priest, which line that was going to come through, how that was going to happen. So they just went and picked up the people off the street and made them priests.
Yes. So, I mean, it's just sin on top of sin on top of sin. Made a graven image, number one, and basically reinstalled worship of Hathor.
One for each area is why he made 2. He made one.
When you see the map, you'll see why he thought that would. What he was trying to do is to keep people from having to go to Jerusalem, because if they went to Jerusalem, there they would be out of the northern kingdom. They're going to be surrounded by all these people out of the tribe of Judah, going, y'all are just sinners. Y'all are just sinners. Y'all need to join back up with us, and that's what he didn't want them to have to put up with or be influenced by. Okay. But let's look at verses 28, 29, 30, and 31 in more detail. How many of you remember this? We covered it. For those of you who have joined us in the recent past, haven't been with us, all that long, we covered this when we were studying the Exodus out of Egypt. References to the lady. References to Baal-Loth.
Hathor,
the cow goddess. If y'all remember the video that we referred you to, the Rhoda and the Sergio and Rhoda video, where they went to the copper mine just about 20 miles north of the Gulf of Aqaba, you saw a portion of that where they showed that there was a temple down there. And why is that? The one thing about Hathor is, I mean, she's a goddess of several things, but one of the main things she was supposedly the goddess of was miners. She was the patron goddess, of miners. And you're going to see why, why we know that in just a minute.
She was kind of a mother goddess over people, that, she brought prosperity of crops and
nurturing.
All that.
Yes. So, all right. Prior to the time that Moses returned to Egypt to confront Pharaoh, the Hebrews were apparently principally worshiping the Egyptian goddess Hathor, commonly referred to in a lot of their writings as the lady. They were expecting Hathor to save them from their suffering. Initially, gave Hathor credit for the supernatural workings that Moses presided over. How many of y'all knew that? Now, those of you that have been with us from the beginning, you remember we covered this. How many of you know where this comes from? Well, we're fixing to show you. Proto-Hebrew writing. The inscription on this, what they call the Rosetta Sphinx, says, "He who is loved by the lady." Okay? That is written in Proto-Hebrew. That is the oldest form of Hebrew that anybody's been able to find. But it was the writing that existed at the time of Moses. And all the Bible critics had said that there's no way Joshua and Moses wrote all these books and wrote all these scrolls, etc., because there was no written language at the time. That is hogwash. It's been proven that it's hogwash. Okay.
You know what's so upsetting to me? The translation of the Egyptian, you'll see the one on the right says, "Beloved of Hathor, lady of turquoise." God made turquoise. I'm not giving up my turquoise any more than I'm giving up a rainbow or anything else. That's still made by God. So I'm sorry that she was that. That doesn't mean that for me. And I just want to say that right now.
I understand. Well, here's the reason that reference to turquoise is there.
Because of the miners. Yeah.
The miners okay. The Hebrews in Egypt had two very noteworthy things that three when you count making the mud bricks and building buildings. Two very notable things that archaeology shows that they were the main purveyors of. One is winemaking. They were experts at winemaking, growing grapes, making wine in large quantities. Okay, that's one. The other was so many of the young men were shipped off down to the southern end of the Sinai Peninsula to work the turquoise mines. Okay, the turquoise mines in southern Mount Sinai Peninsula, and that's where the reference to the turquoise comes from. Hathor is goddess of the miners. That's why they're connected. Okay. Mm-hmm. And obviously the third thing was, brick making and building, public works structures and things like that. Okay. Let's see what this says. It is a time to be hopeless. The lady, Baloth, had organized for battle. We banded together to remain with heads held high. We celebrated a festival of the sun, which came out in order to hold us back. Now, folks, this is written in Hebrew in Mount Sinai. Okay? This is why everybody knows that after Joseph and his brothers and his dad made it into Egypt, think about it. You've heard the phrase, how many generations does it take to lose democracy? You've heard Donald Trump said it. Ron DeSantis has said it. A lot of your conservative pundits say it. 1 generation, 2 generations at most, and democracy's gone. Okay. Well, the same thing holds true here, according to archaeology. Joseph and his brothers and Jacob, they were followers of Jehovah. They believed, the prophecies that had been handed down to them about, they were going to have to spend some time in Egypt, but they were going to be, brought back to the promised land and things like that. But a couple of generations later, what do you find? The Hebrews were big into the Egyptian little g gods. And Hathor is one that there seems to have been found a lot of physical evidence that that's who they worshiped. Okay, let's move on.
God said that, the people were stiff-necked people. He called them a stiff-necked people, but it's almost like they were a rubberneck people. They could look this way for a little while and then they were turning back to these things. And I mean, if you don't, this is called invisible things for a reason, because we want to get across to people, and there's no better evidence than this, that these entities come back time and time and time again and influence the people to turn to them. That's happening now. And, you see that over and over again, because like you said, you can go a generation and then you would think, okay, well, they forgot about Hathor. They forgot about all that. They probably did until that spiritual entity came up and started influencing them again.
Well, what happened in the wilderness when Moses was a little late coming down off Mount Sinai?
Next thing you know, they've got a golden calf.
Golden calf, and where did the golden calf
Who brought
come
us
from?
up out of Egypt? He
Yes.
said they made a molten calf, worshipped and sacrificed to it, and said, "This is your God who brought you from Egypt." And I think the slide before quotes the scripture where he says, "I put the gold in the fire, and this calf popped out."
Yeah.
Like it just happened. I mean, I don't know if that was a supernatural thing, but it could have been.
Well,
I don't know.
That was basically Aaron.
I think he was just. He was just
he
was
like a deer caught in the headlight. He didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
He just knew he had already screwed up. But nonetheless,
the thing behind it is that there is a spiritual entity behind this that is influencing,
striving
constantly coming back.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Right. I'm sorry.
One more, and this is, people don't even know this exists. Watch this. Our bound servitude had lingered. Moses then provoked astonishment. It is a year of astonishment because of the lady.
The lady.
They are, this is so unbelievable. They are hearing about what's going on in Pharaoh's palace, and Moses and Aaron working all these miracles and these plagues, and they're giving credit.
God working all these through Moses and Aaron, of course.
Of course.
They're not giving him any credit. They're not giving Jehovah any credit. It's, the lady has saved us.
Now,
folks, that's just wild.
For those of you who have only been following us recently, did you even know these physical objects exist with Proto-Hebrew inscriptions carved into them?
If you want to know more about this, you probably could go back to maybe
12, 13, 14, something like that, I think.
No, I mean, we had hit the Tower of Babel by number 5 or 6, so it's really early on.
No. Tower of Babel was before the Exodus.
That's true. Okay, let's see.
12, 13, 14, somewhere around in there.
The ones about the Exodus and the little G gods. That is a really good one to go back and watch if you haven't watched those before. And we get into detail about each of the gods that each plague was kind of in the face of that, because you always wonder, why frogs? Why this? Why that? Well, we explain why if you want to go back and watch those.
Well, in scripture, God specifically said, I will judge, or either I have judged the gods of Egypt. In other words, look, I made these things. I created these things. I am the only one who is me. There is no other like me. I am going to prove they are nothing compared to me. And he did. He did. But the Hebrews, in their weakness, I mean, you got to remember now, Egypt was a land with over 2,000 recognized little G gods. Okay. I'm not saying there were 2,000 all at one time, but in the annals of the Egyptian writings, there are cataloged at least 2,000 little G gods that people would worship from one time or another. Okay. They were immersed in it. And this is what their kids were hearing. This is what they're
don't discount the fact that these, and while they may have made up a lot of these and they may not have had entities behind them, so many of them did. And so many of them, we've talked about the Dark Trinity and, some of the major gods, call them little G gods because they're Elohim, but they're not God. Okay.
They're not the one true Jehovah God.
They're not God. There's only one God. But what I'm saying is those are still here. They didn't go anywhere. They're still here influencing us today.
Yep. They had to flee. That's as the apostles left Passover, and they started making disciples in all the nations. That was the plea of the psalmist in Psalms 82 in verse 8 when he says, reclaim the nations. Reclaim the nations.
Jesus reclaimed. We'll get into that. We'll get into Jesus reclaiming the nations when we get closer to the New Testament more, but I'm sorry, I got you digressed.
That's
Got
okay.
you severely digressed.
That's okay.
We're at 1 hour, so what you got? What else you got?
This is the background of why Jeroboam was able to pull what he pulled, is because Hathor hadn't gone anywhere. Hathor was still there, alive and well in the minds of the people. Okay, she was one of the little g gods that they would that basically had attached to the Hebrews. Okay, so when he whipped up 2 golden calves and put one in Dan and one in Bethel, oh man, they just rolled out of bed on different sides. All they had to do, and they were right off in it.
Yeah.
Okay, now here we go.
Is this chapter 12 now?
Yeah, we're still in chapter 12.
Okay, go ahead.
All right,
we're at an hour, so you're probably going to have to figure out.
I know, we got to hurry. Yeah, we're going to have to break. All right.
Okay.
Way up north, there's Dan, and it doesn't show it that well on this map, but if other maps we've shown you, Dan is very, very close to what's known later as Caesarea Philippi. And what do we know Caesarea Philippi was? That's where the gates of hell were, at the base of Mount Hermon. So isn't that strange that one of the places he chooses to pick for one of the worship centers to be was the city of Dan, way up there next to Mount Hermon. Okay, we already know Mount Hermon has a sketchy past. All right, where was the other one? The other one was down here at Bethel, which is just north of the border between the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. Okay, so 2 places that Jeroboam set up for them to worship these golden calves. All right.
Yeah, now, he was afraid not to do one at Bethel because they'd be too close to Jerusalem. He was intercepting them there, right at that edge. Right. So they had their own places of worship.
Yeah, he didn't want them to go any further than Bethel because he was afraid he would lose them to the southern kingdom. They would be influenced. All right, this is another map. If y'all could pause it and blow it up, this is another good map to refer to. Same information, okay? Now we begin chapter 13. Sweetie, you want to break here?
I think we need to.
Okay.
You are so optimistic when you start this. You're going to do I think I'm going to start putting, instead of putting what chapters we're going to do, I'm going to say we're going to start with 11 or we're going to start with 12.
Okay. Because I'm guilty.
We have to talk about it.
I'm guilty. All right. Any questions? Let me see. Oh,
let's see. Yeah.
Let's go down. I'm just going.
To this day, people are still willing to serve other gods. If you don't believe it, go on eBay or go on Etsy and look at the little g gods and things that are. What you trying to find, Key?
This right here.
Okay.
Okay, in 1 Kings, this is a reference slide for you guys. Let's put it up here.
Yeah, there we go. That's where we are.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, and then the next one is that one. Can you take the banner down at the bottom, sweetie?
I can. Hang on just a second. I'm doing something else right now. Get that banner off there.
Okay. Both of these are really good slides for you to pause and take screenshots of. And like I've told you before, if you could laminate them and make them where they're easy to preserve, they'll be good for you. It's good reference material out of both of those. Okay. Now, sweetie, what do we want to do? We're not gonna try to do 13 and 14.
Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any comments? Got anything else we need to cover? This seems kind of, what's the word, rudimentary, that we're going through the motions here of trying. Yeah,
rudimentary. Is that what you're
rudimentary?
trying to say?
There you go. But there are lessons in this. There are lessons in this, and I think the biggest takeaway I have from this is the little g gods constantly influencing the people, and how quick they are to pick that back up,
to fall into it. Yes.
And I know it's easy to sit here and say, well, I wouldn't have done that, or I would have learned my lesson. But
yeah, I mean, there's Jeroboam being told, by a man of God. You got to remember now, in this point in time, there are two types of people that start showing up very prominently: kings and prophets. Kings and prophets. And if you had been approached by what everybody would consider a man of God, he tells you he's hearing from God. Remember, how do you know a true prophet from a false prophet? What he says comes true.
Every time.
Every time. Without fail. Well, Jeroboam is told he's going to be made king of the northern 10 tribes. Well, what happened after the meeting with Rehoboam? And they rejected Rehoboam's harshness and his threats to make things worse. Well, the people of the 10 tribes in the north made Jeroboam king. Well, that would have got my attention.
Let me ask
Why
you
did it do him some good?
And I wonder what other people think about this. Were there a lot of people who claimed to be prophets? Was there some element thrown in here where you didn't know whether somebody was really a prophet of God or not? I wonder about that.
Yes,
because they did talk about false prophets. So would it be easy to have that little g God sitting on your shoulder and go, he's not a prophet. He's not a real prophet.
Well,
I mean,
as we continue to go through the first and second Kings and on, you're going to see examples of false prophets. And the false prophets were almost always followers of one or more of the little g gods. Okay.
Yeah. I wish we could have gone on and incorporated those other two chapters, because there are some things that are going to happen next that are weird.
Very weird. Some of the strangest things in your Bible. But we'll cover them next Sunday, because we're already at 7:39 and we don't want to wear out our welcome.
That's right. That's
exactly all right.
Okay.
Well, y'all, we thank you for being with us tonight. I don't know. Should I be disappointed we only got to cover one chapter, but I thought we did a good job, Mama.
I think we did okay covering it. I think it's a pivotal point in, the history of the nation of Israel, for sure. And, I've asked you, I really wanted to get to a couple of things. If you want to just really quickly tell people today, it would help me. And when you explain it to me, it helps me to know what we're talking about today. Like, who was Persia? Who was this? Who was that? And I know you can look at a map and you think that's obvious, but we're not all that map savvy.
Well, and those nations are going to come up very quickly.
Mm-hmm. But when those nations came up and you explained to me which nations those were, I thought, oh my gosh, that is still happening.
Yes,
we're watching that right now, and if everybody we can't get into all that. I know, but I want to get into that. I want to understand that a little bit better.
Sonar, why are the Facebook users, why are they not identified?
I have no idea, because I went on Facebook itself, and if you're on Facebook right now, your name is listed by your little Facebook icon, But tonight, for some reason on StreamYard, we're only seeing that you are a Facebook user. So we are
Yeah.
so sorry.
We have no idea who you are.
Somebody said, let's see, I can tell you on Facebook who said this. Donna. Donna said, too much at one time gets lost, even if we are shoveling it into ourselves. Thank you for this great study. I think one is enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, and also I know that over the last number of weeks, we've had some people who've joined us that haven't been with us before. And that's why I thought it would be good to show you the evidence of the goddess Hathor and her tie to the nation of Israel that came all the way back from their time in Egypt and through the Exodus, and why that dead blasted golden calf keeps popping up.
Yep. I wish that I want to call your attention to something too. In the comments, I pinned it at the top. There's supposed to be a link, and it's www.provinceacademy.org, etc. But it is a really good chart of the kings of Israel and Judah, and kind of I like a timeline. I like a visual to look at all that. And it does, even though we're not going to go through every bit of that in the Bible, Keith and I have already said that once we kind of get past the next couple of chapters, we're going to hit some highlights of some of the more major stories. Not that it's not all important, but just some of the major stories. We want to talk about Elijah. We want to talk about Elisha. We want to talk about Ahab and Jezebel. But other than those, we are going to skip over a good bit of
we'll be picking. Yeah, we'll be picking and choosing the passages, but now that doesn't mean you don't need to be reading on your own.
Read the whole thing.
Read the whole thing, but we will be picking out, as the Lord leads us to which ones to highlight and what to bring out of the Scripture, and what Scripture needs to be fleshed out, so to speak, like y'all know we do, which is why I guess y'all think these are good for y'all, because we cover a lot of background for Scripture. We hope is good for you.
And if we skip over something that somebody wishes they had some answers to, they just need to send us something and let us know, and we'll look at it. We'll try if we can. It's not that we're skipping over it because we don't think it's important. It's just, man, we want to get to the New Testament so bad we can't stand it.
I know it. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much. Please, 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 like, subscribe, share, keep praying for us.
And if you're watching this in the future, we have a huge audience that does not watch this when we stream live. It's just not a good time, but they do it at their own leisure. They watch this. Hundreds and hundreds of people watch it. And thank you to all of those people. And we hope that, this is doing some good. We hope this is helping somebody.
Sure do. All right. We love y'all. We thank you. Good night.